Hello and welcome to sunny Norfolk. It's May the 15th, 1976, and we're looking at a new musical express. And on the cover we have Mr. Bowie. Somehow this one missed my scrapbooks, which not even I can describe why that would be. But anyway, on the cover we got Bowie, and as it's May the 15th, I'm guessing it's probably reviews of the possibly a review of the I Solar, otherwise known as Station to Station tour, where he did a series of nights in London. But we'll come to that later because it'll obviously crop up in here. Also mentioned on the front are Stills, which will mean Stephen Stills, Feel Goods, Dr. Feelgood, Bowie, Genesis, and Nils Lofgren. So let's have a look at the news desk. Could be quite interesting. The reason I've gone for one sort of early to mid 76 is I'm hoping, probably wrongly, but I'm hoping there may be a mention of the Pistols in here, because of course they started doing a few gigs here and there around about this date, and as it's May, we may get some mention of some upcoming quite historic gigs, but we'll see. We could be wrong. But the news pages. Groovies due here. This, of course, is a Flaming Groovies. Flaming Groovies are to play British concert dates in the early summer. The American punk rock band, the name already being used, punk rock, which, if you believe legend, was coined by Caroline Coon in this country, but it had been being used in America for years, obviously. So, I don't know, I think a lot of people claim to have coined the word punk for these bands, but I think it's just historic. So the American punk rock band last appeared live in this country several years ago. They're now being lined up by Albion Music for a visit in late June or early July. Who else we got? Dr. Feelgood's mini tour. They played Norwich St Andrews Hall, Cambridge, Cardiff, Bracknell and Manchester. Didn't do Bristol that time. Peter Green to rejoin Fleetwood Mac. I don't think that happened. Bowie's greatest hits. David Bowie has a greatest hits album released by RCA on May the 21st. And an interesting aspect of the set is that Bowie himself was responsible for its compilation. He also chose the title, which was labelled as Changes One Bowie. The first peak period Bowie compilation, which the first, I think it was the first 10,000 copies came with an alternative version of John and Money Dancing on it. So if you got one that sounds a bit weird, it was one of the first 10,000. Sensation Alex Harvey Band have a new single out on May the 21st, Boston Tea Party, which I believe they appeared on Top of the Pops doing that, which is a bit weird. SAHB on Top of the Pops. Who else we got here? That's all a bit boring old fart, to use punk parlance. Tangerine Dream have been confirmed for an additional concert date. Whew. Just looking for interesting stuff here. Let's turn the page where we have the charts. Number one on May the 15th, 1976 was Fernando by ABBA. And number two was Single Bed by Fox. I loved Fox. The lovely Nusha. She had something about her. I tried playing a Fox album the other day, which was virtually impossible. Singles only, not really an album band. Number three was Save Your Kisses for Me by Brotherhood of Man, the English ABBA. Number four was Silver Star by Four Seasons. Number five was Jungle Rock by Hank Mizell. Number six was Get Up and Boogie by Silver Convention. And number seven was Convoy GB by Laurie Lingo and the Dipsticks, radio and DJ shite. Number 8 was Can't Help Falling in Love with the Stylistics. Number 9, Fool to Cry by the Stones. And number 10, Life is Too Short Girl by Sheer Elegance. A lot of people that have been lost in the sands of time in this chart. And I guess this was because we were looking in May 1976 as a changing of the guard happening very rapidly. So it was a little bit of limbo really throughout 76 until the Pistols and the Damned and the Clash come early 77 started getting mentioned in the music press. But it was definitely a sort of a very uninteresting period mainstream wise. And the album chart, number 1, ABBA's greatest hits. I won't have a word said against ABBA, they're great pop songs of course, but number 2, Black and Blue by the Stones. Number 3, Wings at the Speed of Sound. Number 4, Presence by Led Zeppelin. Probably, I mean, it's got like one great song, Achilles' Last Stand, which is one of Led Zeppelin's great songs, but they had gone a bit stale by then. Number 5, Diana Ross. Number 6, Rock Follies, the TV programme soundtrack, if you like. Number 7, How Dare You by 10cc. Number 8, a various artists' job called Jukebox Jive. Number 9, The Eagles' Greatest Hits. And number 10, Instrumental Gold, which I hate to think how that sounded. US singles, number 1 was Welcome Back by John Sebastian. And US album charts, number 1 was Presence by Led Zeppelin. We then got an article about Genesis. Can little people rock and roll? Frankly, I don't give a shite. It's interesting. An advert for Real Flashmen and their flasher jackets, huzzah jackets, which I certainly don't remember being worn in 1976. I think of them very much as a Carnaby Street 1960s swinging London thing, or many years later the Libertines wearing them, of course. But here we have an advert for Real Flashman flasher jackets, the Huzzah or the Dragoon, and cherry picker trousers with a stripe down the side. So you buy the suit for £19.90, post free. Well, they took out a third of a page ad here, and I can't imagine they sold many because I don't remember them. On we go to a full page ad for Pilot Running Water. Pilot, of course, with their lead singer David Payton. I think it was David Payton, who was their lead singer, songwriter and guitarist, who was a highly respected session player, had a couple of hit singles, and so they got sort of lumped in together with all the teeny bands, if you like, but they were actually a very serious band. Didn't like them, I don't know why I'm talking about them, they were shite, but strange how a serious band can have one hit single and suddenly their whole life changes. I wonder if it did them any good or not, to be honest. Thrills, which is the little satire page, as we said before. The Lone Groover Returns, which is Enemy's strip cartoon, which made a crossover. It was in there for years, and it sort of made a crossover from the sort of stoner hippie freak thing into punk quite well. Yeah, it worked quite well, the Lone Groover, in both scenes, to be fair. Thrills again. Well, here we go. What's this about Bowie? There's a picture of Candy Clark, who was his co-star in The Man Who Fell to Earth. So there's probably going to be a bit of mention of that. I'm sure David Bowie doesn't wait till the curtains are closed. Baby Zoe is asleep and he's got 2 pints of bitter inside him before he makes love. I can't see him wearing pyjamas or daubing himself with high karate aftershave in an effort to have his way with Angie. I can't, for that matter, picture Angie scouring the lingerie department of Marks and Spencer's for a naughty nightie with which to tickle her husband's fancy. I rather imagined they were different, but perhaps I was wrong, because, according to the Daily Mirror, Mr. and Mrs. Bowie are pretty much the norm as a married couple. True, he does admit, I used to say yes to everything, but apparently that's all over now. Says Mrs. Bowie, I guess we are both slowing up. We really have changed. Well, we'll come back to that in a minute. Well, Angie, if you're the wifely norm, then you would obviously have been rather concerned about your husband's nude scenes with actress Candy Clark. Jealous even, but don't panic, I can put your mind at rest. Ms. Clark evidently didn't find your husband a big turn-on. In Rivali, she is quoted as saying, "Darling David is lousy at kissing." Well, it's interesting this, because that is obviously, I've got the cut-in somewhere from that Rivali interview with Candy Clark, and I do remember that quite well. And it is referring obviously to the sex scenes in The Man Who Fell to Earth. Great film, by the way. Some may say it's dated slightly. I think it's amazing. I showed it to Gemma a while back, and yeah, there were times that she wasn't impressed, but overall it is a great film. Anyway, it's quite funny they're going on about Bowie, David Bowie and Angie being very lovey-dovey, because this, of course, was the dawn of their marriage breaking down in a terrible way. Here we are in May '76, which is after Station to Station had been released. The next album was Low. Now, of course, that was the first of the so-called Berlin trilogy. And I saw Angie Bowie at Webbington Country Club in March of '77. And her walk-on music was Speed of Life from Low. And I didn't know at the time, nobody knew at the time, by this time their marriage had completely broken down. Now, this run they did for a week, it was her, a chap called Roy Martin, her friend Gladys Shock, who was a bit of a softcore porn star, Connie, her real name, was a great friend of Angie. It was shockingly bad, corny cabaret. And it was at the Webbington Country Club, which was old school cabaret club, and my father happened to know the chap that ran it, a chap called Weston. And I begged him to take me down there because it was out in the middle of nowhere, the Webbington Country Club. And it's strange because I never really got on with my dad, but for some reason I think he saw me growing up. I was 17 by then, and he saw me growing up and he thought, this is a good chance for me to go out with my boy. So he rang up this chap, I think it was Alan Weston, he rang up this chap and said, "Can you get us in for the week? We want to come along for the week. My boy's a big Bowie fan, he wants to meet Angie Bowie." So this chap Alan Weston said, yeah, come along. So we went along every night, and I met Angie and all the crew and spent virtually every evening with them after the show, and went to the end of the run party at the end of the week. And she was lovely. She was incredible. I was 17, I was naive, I was incredibly shy, but she treated me like her own son. And people have knocked her in the years since, being a loud, brash American. She was anything but. She was warm, she was kind, absolutely lovely, as were the rest of them, apart from Roy Martin, who was a bit of a cunt, to be honest. But yeah, that's my story about Angie Bowie. And so a year later, that was the point of me coming back to this, was my dad, mouthy git that he was, one of the nights that we were sat with Angie after the show chatting, he said, "Oh, Angie, my boy Mark, he's a huge fan of your husband. Is there any chance you could get David to write him a letter?" And I'm there cringing, thinking, oh, this is so embarrassing. And she was, "Yeah, of course I will, of course I will." Of course, I never got it, because by this point, their marriage had completely broken down. Anyway, there we go. That's my story. So, totally out on a limb there, but there we are. Next page, Games for May. 10 years ago, the Pink Floyd were a semi-formed idea in the mind of one Syd Barrett. So we're just looking back at 10 years after Syd Barrett disappeared, I guess. Say It Ain't So, Murray Head. Murray Head went on to have a hit, didn't he, with One Night in Bangkok from the musical Chess. But he apparently, I don't remember him, to be honest, in the mid-70s, but I believe he was quite a credible artist. Oh, here we are. The Man Who Fell into Sinatra's Suit. This is an article relating to Bowie's run at Wembley on the Ice Solar, or as it was known then, the Station to Station tour. Some classic photos of Bowie there. two that I remember very, very well out of the thousands that were taken on that run. I'm not going to go too much into it because I'll end up just reading the whole thing again, but there we go. Platters, this is the new singles. And given where we are in May of 76, I'm going to hazard a guess that it's quite likely that most of them we never heard of. So let's have a look. Jonathan King, He's So Fine. That's clearly the Chiffon song, and that wasn't a hit. Richard and Williams, Take Good Care of My Baby. No. Amanda Lear, there's another Bowie connection. There were always rumours that he had a bit of an affair, a bit of a fling with Amanda Lear, who of course was the cover star of Roxy Music's For Your Pleasure. I'm not even going to read all these out because, to be honest, Wings, Silly Love Songs. That was obviously a hit. The Fatback Band, Party Time Is Any Time. Wasn't a hit, but what a fantastic song. And they say, will nothing stop the march of disco? Thank God for reggae. Oh, come on, the Fatbacks, absolutely brilliant. Nils Lofgren, the title track from Cry Tough, which is a great album. But a whole page virtually, and apart from Wings, no hits. Oh, album reviews. And the lead review is the Ramones debut on Sire, on import, before it was released in this country. Again, I won't go too much into it because I could read the whole lot out, but let's just read the first couple of paragraphs. This is a review by Nick Kent, The Enemy's Bad Boy. If you never read it, read his biography. It's bloody hilarious. Anyway, a week back, if you'd asked me nicely, I'd have dogmatically opined that Ramones, SASD 7520, was absolutely the most grievous hot rock sideswipe from the Nova heat zone since the halcyon grunge of raw power. The fuck's he on about? Well, 7 days have elapsed and I'm bowing out on that high-minded slant, but that's not to say that the initial allure has lessened any. The Ramones, in case you've been vacationing in Thailand or contracted leprosy in the last 12 months, are the punk cause célèbre of the moment. The hands-down champions of the New York New Wave, Black Generation sweepstakes. And it's typical Nick Kent. I think he just disappears of his own arse on occasions with his reviews. But it's interesting to see a review of the Ramones' first album before it was actually released in this country. Right now, the best moments on this record to be lodged on side 1, Blitzkrieg Bop, Beat on the Brat and Judy as a Punk. The opening forays are truly golden moments. Indeed, basic punk rock hasn't sounded this good since disco death rock music set in and started calling the shots on your gams. I can't even begin to tell you how important that first Ramones album was. It's one of the, probably, in my eyes anyway, the 5 most important albums in the history of rock and roll. What it influenced, how it influenced it, is immeasurable, totally. The last paragraph, the Ramones don't say much. They're pretty vacant. Before the Pistols had released Pretty Vacant. They're pretty vacant, but they rock out with a vengeance. And anyway, the Archers were never hip to sniffing glue or making out to the dance of romance. It's interesting that Nick Kent particularly has used that term, pretty vacant. The Ramones don't say much. They're pretty vacant. And it's interesting because here we are, we're in May 76, and Pretty Vacant was one of the first songs the Pistols recorded and played. And EMI, when they signed to EMI, actually wanted Pretty Vacant as the lead single. And of course it was Anarchy. The other interesting thing there is, so Nick Kent had obviously seen, I would say at this point, well, certainly seen the Pistols sing Pretty Vacant. The other interesting thing is that at one point, for a very brief period, McLaren wanted Nick Kent to front the Pistols. Can you imagine Nick Kent fronting the Pistols? Madness, absolute madness. But obviously Pretty Vacant is a John Lydon, Johnny Rotten lyric. So Nick Kent had seen the Pistols perform Pretty Vacant and used the term there. Cheeky bastard. So, Ian Hunter, All American Alien Boy. That's a fantastic album. Absolutely brilliant album. Widowmaker. Hard rock, never liked them, weren't very good. More Platters. And more Platters. Steve Marriott, Jess Roden. That's similar artists really, weren't they? Rock artists. Steve Marriott picture here with of him with his hair cut very short in a sort of almost a proto-punk style. A little bit like the Gorillaz were cutting their hair at the time, so that's quite interesting. And I guess Steve Marriott would have probably, in May of '76, would have been running around the London pub rock scene, so probably would have seen Jesse Hector. And I guess he's probably had his hair cut in a similar style because of that. Double page piece here on Eric von Daniken. Now anyone of my age will all know who Eric von Daniken was. He wrote Chariot of the Gods about ancient aliens and how aliens came to this world in the ancient Egyptian days, and basically a lot of it was ancient Egyptians, but his premise was that the ancient gods of all cultures were actually aliens. It's quite interesting, really. Patti Smith. Horses wasn't long out, was it, in May of '76? She's strange, neurotic, and possessed of a powerful, unconventional sexuality. Got to agree with that. Patti Smith in London at the Roundhouse on the 16th and 17th of May. Yeah, Horses. Charles Shaar Murray said, first albums this good are pretty damn few and far between. It's better than the first Roxy album, better than the first Beatles and Stones albums, better than Dylan's first album. I wonder if he'd say the same now, but yeah, other than Roxy, I'd agree with all that. Here's some gig reviews. I'm just making sure I don't miss a Pistols thing here. Nothing there, but there are the stirrings of punk here. Graham Parker and the Rumour. So, Jethro Tull, Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die. As is well recorded, Jethro Tull are my guilty pleasure, and I remember buying that album very well. But I liked it at the time. But I look back at it now, and it was definitely Jethro Tull trying to go rock, and it doesn't really work for me now. Looking back on it. On the Town, Elton John, live. Ounce Bounce Craze sweeps the provinces. Backstreet Crawler, more rock. So there's a lot of rock rather than heavy rock at this point. It was this, as we said, the crossover period. Little advert for advertising for contestants for Pop Quest, which was a TV pop quiz show. Yorkshire Television requires teenagers throughout Britain between the age of 12 and 17 with a high standard of pop music and a history of pop. Please apply to Shirley Taylor at Yorkshire Television. More live reviews. Nils Lofgren, Alex Harvey. Alex Harvey, definitely proto-punk. There's, some would say Nils Lofgren is slightly. Two good, very good artists. The Albertos, Give It To You Straight. This is interesting, actually. The Albertos y los Trios Paranoias, an advert for their first album. Full page ad, which would have cost a lot of money. But the Albertos never really came into the public eye until punk broke in '77. Their Snuff Rock EP is a punk rock classic, even though it's a parody. So it's interesting to see why Transatlantic would have taken that full page ad for the Albertos then. They probably regretted it because, I don't know, what was the Albertos, pre-punk, the Albertos stage musical, Sleek I think it was called, which were probably quite successful, but that wouldn't have transmuted into album sales, I'm quite sure. Average white band. Jazz, nope. Nationwide gig guide. I could look all through that for Pistol stuff and possibly find something, but we won't. Gig pages. This is adverts for gigs. Let's have a look here. May. Kiss with Stray. Manfred Mann's Earth Band. Kersal Flyers. Oh! Look at this. We've got a tiny little advert, little letterbox advert, basic type. Sex Pistols are at the 100 Club, Tuesday, May the 18th, 20th and 25th at 8 p.m. and at Screen on the Green, Islington at midnight on Monday, May the 17th. Nothing else, just that. And there we're looking at legendary gigs. Just incredible, just to look at that little ad there. I'm currently rereading Jordan's book, and we've reached the point in the book where this has just happened, and it's quite poignant looking back at a little ad for that, those gigs, incredible. New Victoria Theatre, Wilton Road, SW1, Good Earth Promotions present Budgie and Strife. Two three-piece bands, Budgie from Wales, who, funnily enough, the Pistols supported in Hastings, as if you read Jordan's book you'll find that out. And Strife, who were one of the most underrated of all rock bands of the mid-70s. Made two albums. First one was called Rush, and the second one was called Back to Thunder. And they're amazing. So funny to see two three-piece rock bands there, and both really good. That would have been a great gig to go and see. Third band as well, Dirty Tricks. Can't say I know who they were. Information City is where we go in depth into what fans want to know about various bands and artists. When is the MC5 compilation mentioned in NME about 6 months ago likely to be released here? I'm a big Judas Priest freak, and I was wondering if you could tell me what equipment is used by the band. Adverts for posters. Adverts for t-shirts, etc, etc. Floppy safari hats, £1.65 each. 6 foot long bullwhip, £1.90. More clothes. Oh, crossword I finished that week. Records for sale. See if we got anything in here that's interesting. You get a lot of adverts like this in those days. Bowie, Zeppelin, Who, Yes, Rare. Stamps addressed envelope to David in the West Midlands. They're basically bootlegs, which I bought a few of. I used to get my bootlegs. I used to take a monthly trip up to London, even at the age of 16, 17, and get on Portobello Road. And there was a fella just near enough under the Westway who used to sell bootlegs. Got a few there, mainly tapes at the time, but I got a few albums there. Personal. Lonely guy, 20, seeks quiet, sincere girlfriend, Darlington area. Gas bag. That's the letters page. I'm guessing there won't be much that interesting there. Oh, there is a letter here about somebody questioning Bowie's so-called love of fascism. So when he came back to the UK, prior to the Station to Station gigs, and he turned up in London, and So Say gave a Heil Hitler, if you like, a Hitler salute, which has always been argued whether it was just the photograph was just him waving or it was. But he did actually say that Britain could benefit from a fascist government. He was a confused boy at the time. I won't go into any more there, but he was a very confused boy who had filled up on cocaine whilst living on milk and peppers. So we won't say any more about that. But there we go. And there we go. That page, Baker Gurvitt's Army. That's Ginger Baker and Adrian Gurvitz and his brother. Another rock band. So there we go. That was May the 15th, 1976. And I'll see you next time.